Okay, with these two snares, the one in the back, I want you to see, this is just as we took it out of the package, and it has an elongated loop that sort of pulls the shape down. The one that's closest to you is one that we've preloaded, and all we've essentially done is put more of a circular curve into this part of the snare, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But there's two reasons that we do that. Number one is the shape itself lends to a better covering of the crawl under the fence. As you can see, this one's narrower and taller this way, whereas this one's got a really nice circular shape. The second reason is, watch what happens when an animal walks through this factory size and conditioned shape. It really takes quite a bit of effort to pull that snare down and restrict it, okay? But the one that we've preloaded, this portion of the snare is actually pushing and ready to go at just a second whisper of a touch that almost fires itself as the animal drops through there, okay? Let me show you how we do that. Okay, here's one of our 8 to 10 inch pieces of 14 gauge wire. I've just doubled it over. I'm gonna go to a 4-way intersection of wire on the fence and take the swivel end of my snare and wrap that tight. You can do it by hand, or if you prefer, you can do it with your side cuts and twist it. Now, there's a reason that we're using it like this. There's two things. The fence is going to have some spring to it, which is going to allow this to have some flex and absorb some shock. But this is going to allow the snare swivel to do its job. You see the cable spinning inside? That's what that's designed to do. So I've got it far enough away from the crawl under area. This is an 84-inch long snare. The animal can get caught, come out, and get plenty far away from the area that our trap set is at. It's not going to tear that up. So I can come here tomorrow if we have a catch, undo my snare, reset, and I haven't torn up my crawl under area, so you can continue to have snares set at the same location without much disturbance. Okay, now I showed you the difference between a factory loop and a loaded snare. We're going to real simply and quickly show how to load this loop. First of all, this is hanging this way, so as you pull your cable stop in, you see that 90-degree bend, this is going to have the tendency to need to go this way. So as I use the fence to load these, I'm grabbing this in with my thumb and I'm trying to keep it straight this way. I'm applying pressure and pulling and letting it go more. I'm lightening up on my pressure as I go. Initially, right there after the 90, I'm pulling tight and I'm letting up. What you're going to see, and you'll work on this, it's going to take a little bit of practice. We're getting a candy cane shape or a shepherd's hook. That's the shape that you want to create a nice nice circular shape for your snare loop. Now you see how that's getting pretty round. Now it takes a little practice to do this to make all yours consistent, and you can actually even adjust. You'll see now that that's a lot more circular than the first one that from the factory. Before I did this, it was more teardrop shaped this way. Now we've got a really nice circular loop. But here's that key. You see that curve right there? That's going to allow that to help throw that cable and slide down on itself much quicker. It's providing some tension to want to throw that way. Over here to the location, you'll see that I've taken that 8 to 10 inch piece of number 14 gauge wire. I've bent a loop, a hook end, doubled it back over on itself and tightened it down. And I'm twisted about 2 or 3 times on a horizontal wire and 2 or 3 wraps on a vertical wire. What that does is, see how that's nice and stiff? This support wire will not spin on the fence wire. That's why it's wrapped a couple times up this way. So that gives me a nice stiff piece of wire to adjust the perfect placement for my snare loop. Now I'm gonna hold it with my hand and get an approximation for where I want it, which is about right there. And where my thumb was is about the perfect spot for me to put my support wire and that coiled whammy. So what you do is slide that over that, like so, and you can spin this and it'll thread down tight on both the cable and the support wire, and there you go. Now with my hand, I can just take and bend this support wire to get the snare in the perfect placement that I want. And I'm 1.5 to 2 inches off the bottom of the crawl. I'm pretty well centered. The stick is actually helping act like a guide here. we've got the size that we want for a coyote or a cat's head to go through here. The whammy is a little bit back. See the cam, you can slide it back and forth with your finger. You don't want it touching the coil of your support. Bring it off a little bit, 1/4 inch minimum, and you can sort of bend this wire to get the perfect height and position of your snare loop. Look at that. One more thing, if you get everything in position and you realize that your loop is hanging bottom out or bottom in, instead of having to redo anything, take your fingers and you can twist this cable inside here, spin it one way or the other, you'll hear it click. Now see how that's got a sort of an out away from the fence? You can go back the other way, click. There's a little bit more of an inward lean, but you can, by moving that, just by twisting your cable, you can get it to be perfectly plumb and vertical with the ground, which is what you want. Now, snare making and snare setting is really almost an art form. The more practice, the better you're going to get at it, the quicker you'll get at it. Don't be frustrated with the first few that make. Everybody does that. It's a little bit, it's something new. It's kind of awkward to deal with. But once you develop a system and can consistently do it over and over, before long you'll have them, you know, and just take you a couple minutes to make a set like this, and you'll be surprised at the success that you'll have.